So we've explored types of navigation that can happen from the body mind. And if you didn't get to explore that, go check out that last video. Types of navigation and how they come from unconscious memories being projected beyond awareness, and how that type of navigation in the body mind is largely dependent on brain body regulation. All of the patterns of navigation regulation in the body mind are stored in relation with attachment well-being. There's all these different systems of attachments that have different types of internal needs. And then as the experiences of life happen, the data from those experiences is stored as memories or navigational patterns in relation with the well-being of those specific internal needs during those experiences. And this starts during attachment development in early childhood and creates the foundation. The body mind first begins developing from infancy through age 2. And then there's kind of this raw foundation, and then it kind of starts to build from there. And then between ages 2 and 12, the foundational structures of the body mind have been kind of sculpted, and then the rest of life happens and becomes stored on top of that, if you will. And so it starts with like the rough sketch of the foundation, and then like the actual foundation, and then like the rest of the house, if you will. Okay. And so between ages 0 and 2, that primitive foundation, that rough blueprint outlined sketch, the first few building blocks are there, and there's some formative things that happen that create that foundation that everything else is built off of, right? So if you build something over here, even if this is built well, if something's off in the foundation, then this will be off. And so even though it's a primitive foundation and it's not like the whole building, right, of the structure of the body mind, it's really important. So between ages 0 and 2, that first primitive foundation is built. Between ages 2 and 12, then the whole foundation is built, and then the rest of life, that house just keeps building up, and you've got your walls, and then you've got all these different rooms, and then you've got different, types of wallpapers and paint on those walls, and different types of structures between the walls, and different roofing structures, and you got this whole building of the body mind, if you will. And so experiences are stored in relation with the well-being of internal needs and attachment systems. And so we have all these types of navigation and regulation, right? Okay, but we're over here, and the body mind's, it's been around a while. Like, it wasn't just born yesterday, or we wouldn't be able to like think or feel or walk or talk. The body mind had to grow and learn how to do all of those things, right? And so this body mind has been around for like a minute, right? And so it's been gathering information for quite a while. And you can think of the body mind like hungry hippos. They're just like, oh, yes, I'm learning how to think. I'm learning how to feel. I'm learning how to move. I'm learning how to respond. And the body mind is just like soaking up every moment of experience. And all of its information is being stored in navigational potentials through unconscious memory systems. Navigational potentials through unconscious memory systems. So what happens when there are moments and experiences where attachment needs are not met? What happens when there's moments and experiences where attachment needs are not met? Then those experiences are not being stored effectively into those navigational potentials. And then you continue on, and there's patterns of navigation which are affected by regulation and also affect regulation. But then there's these patterns of navigation that can disrupt implicit health. But the disruption of implicit health is not like, oh, I have a mental health challenge. Oh, no, I have an emotional health challenge. It's actually, there's a unique disruption in the navigation of my body mind. My body mind is navigating my mental states. My body mind is navigating my emotions.
And so it's not just the emotions or the mental states that are being disrupted. It's not the behaviors that are being disrupted. It's the navigational systems in the body mind. But what are the navigational systems? The navigational systems primarily come from unconscious memories. And so now we're saying that there's memories that you cannot consciously access that are actually disrupting the projection of navigation. Okay, but here's the kicker. Even once we understand that, okay, there's unconscious memories that are disrupting navigation, which are affecting my mental health, my emotional health, my behavioral health, whatever it might be. But you cannot go in and access unconscious memories and rewrite them because they're unconscious. And so then, even if you understand this, how do you use it? How do you go in and figure out which unconscious memories are disrupting it, and how do you effectively rewrite them? And that was a big quest in my Implicit Revelations case study, was exploring those two things. One is you have to know what content you are trying to transform, what region of data you're trying to transform, where the information is in terms of navigational activations in the body mind. And that's a whole other thing, because you're not trying to access data from a past time period of life. You're trying to access navigational patterns in the body mind right here, right now. And that is a very different story. That is a very different task. That is a very different thing to approach. You're not going back and saying, yes, I acknowledge that there is these really intensely unfulfilled attachment needs from this time period of life. Okay, let's go access this time period of life in terms of conscious memories, because that's how you would access something like that. Okay, let's go act, or even if you're doing something that puts you in like a self-hypnotic state where you're trying to access stuff deeper, if you're trying to access this data from a past experience, that's still not necessarily the best place to go. There are certain times that might be an appropriate route and approach to take, but you're trying to find the activation of navigation and the location of its projections in the body mind right here, right now. You're not trying to access this data from this past experience. You're trying to figure out, okay, there's trillions of networks in this body mind. There are trillions of pathways in this body mind. And somewhere in this body mind, somewhere inside of my body mind, there are patterns of navigation that are being activated and projected into the interpretations of reality and disrupting my ability to have thoughts and feelings and patterns of movement in my body right here, right now. You're not trying to access this past experience, something that's way over there. It's an experience outside of you, and it's in the past, somewhere else other than here and now. We're not looking at past experiences. We're trying to find the activational location of data in the body mind. And that's a game changer. And so if you're in a healing journey and you've been exploring this stuff and you're like, but I've done the work. I've rewritten those childhood experiences. I've rewritten those past traumas. I've gone back and I understand that there were these things that happened that created these patterns of thinking that aren't so good, that I'm trying to change. And I've done them. And I've gone to all these past experiences and I've rewritten them, and I keep rewriting them, and I keep going back to them because that was clearly the cause of these patterns of thought that I'm trying to change now. And I can't change the thoughts, so I'm trying to change the way the past is stored in my body. And you keep going back and forth between the present symptoms that you want to change and the past experiences that you want to change. But have you found the activational location of navigational patterns in the body mind right here, right now? Not the thoughts, but the things creating the thoughts. And not the thing that first created that pattern of thought, but the pattern of thought that's here right now. That is a very different story. And so that's been a huge passion. In case you couldn't tell, I only have like a little bit of passion sometimes. Only sometimes, so it really only comes around sometimes, right? No, it's like all the time. one of my great passions that has been explored through the Implicit Revelations case study is, how do you get to that very specific data? How do you get to that very specific data? And it's a pretty tall order, but there are really effective, enjoyable, simplified ways to do it once you know what you're doing and how to navigate it and what you're looking for and how to respond with what you're discovering along the way. But if you don't know how to go through that avenue, then it's a pretty tall order because there are trillions of navigational pathways. And just to look at the complexities, there's data from every year of life, and data from each year of life is carrying data in relation with different navigational priorities, and data from each year of life are carrying different ways of associating with the self, and data from each year of life are carrying different pieces of explicit and implicit information, including information in each of the brain hemispheres, and including conscious and unconscious memory data, the fact and the feeling of certain experiences and the navigational patterns it's generated in the body mind. And data from each year of life are carrying unconscious or subconscious associations with every experiential element of reality. And so the way that you associate with clothes, the way that you associate with the things that you see, with the things that you smell, with the things that you hear, with the things that you taste, with the things that you touch, with the abstract conceptualization, like the seasons of the year, or like that example, if you smell a tea and you instinctively think, wow, that smells like black licorice. And that reminds me of this one time I had black licorice and the feeling of that one time that I had black licorice. And I enjoyed that. So I'm going to approach this tea because I like the way the smell makes me feel, because of the way my body mind associates its navigational patterns. And then other people smell and they're like, that doesn't smell like black licorice, because their body mind is translating it differently. So there's data from every year of life, right? You see how this can get pretty complex. And within each of that, it's not just that there's experiences story, it's that there's navigational patterns about how the body mind navigates existence from the inside out. And any moment of disrupted attachment well-being, any moment that you don't feel seen or loved, any moment you don't feel safe and secure, any moment you don't feel supported and connected, any moment you don't feel respected, embraced, any moment you don't feel like you have direction or guidance or opportunity, any moment of unfulfilled attachment needs, no matter how subtle, no matter how seemingly small, no matter how seemingly insignificant it might be at the time, any moment of unfulfilled attachment needs can disrupt the way that the experience of that moment is being translated and stored into the navigational patterns of the body mind. So the first thing is you need to understand how to access the navigational patterns in the body mind that are existing right here, right now, that have nothing to do with past experiences, other than the fact that that's where these patterns started to form, and then other past experiences further grew those patterns. But we're not looking at the past experience. We're not looking at what created the navigational patterns. We're looking at the navigational patterns as they exist right here, right now. And similarly, we're not looking at the surface clues. We might look there for information because the types of the clues that are manifesting, the types of thoughts, the frequency of the thoughts, the duration and intensity of the thoughts, those can be clues to help us figure out how to locate the activation of this navigational pattern. But when you're trying to transform it, you're not transforming a thought pattern. You're not transforming a pattern of feeling. You're not transforming the thought that you're experiencing. You're not transforming the feeling that you're experiencing it. You're transforming the underlying navigational pattern that is behind those thoughts, behind those feelings. Okay? And so you're transforming a navigational pattern. Because even if you're like, I keep having this way of thinking, I'm going to consciously shift and change this way of thinking. And you can do that, but it's only reaching at a surface level. And so the change will not be as deep or as long lasting as you might like it to be. And it might actually take a lot more work to get a lot fewer results. And so if you try just changing a pattern of thinking or feeling, You notice a pattern, you're like, I don't want to think that thought anymore. I'm going to choose a new thought. That's good. That's definitely good. It's good to be aware of it. It's good to put conscious power into that. It's still a good thing to do. But there's more effective ways to create deeper, more lasting, and more substantial transformation, because you're going into that foundation of the body mind where those patterns are being created beyond awareness. And you can actually shapeshift the way that the body mind starts to create patterns moving forward, because you're shapeshifting the foundation of how experiences are being translated into navigational patterns as life continually unfolds. And so the first thing is to find the content of the data you're trying to change, the space in the body mind where that information is activated. Because there's all this data, but if you're like, okay, we're going to work on, shape-shifting these navigational patterns, but they're not activated, then whatever work you're doing, it might rewire some networks, but it won't necessarily rewire the ones that need to be rewired. As data is activated in the body mind, it is automatically rewritten. And so if you can find the location of that underlying pattern that is behind those thoughts, feelings, or types of disrupted navigation, then you can rewrite it on the spot, because it's being rewritten as it's activated. But most of the time when it's activated, it's being rewritten with the same information. Okay, so the first thing is to be able to find the content in the navigational patterns of the body mind. And that is not looking at the surface clues. It's not just looking at the pattern of thought. It's going deeper than that. And it's not looking at the past experiences that might have created it. Both of those can be insights that help us understand maybe the patterns and the structures here. But we're going much deeper than that. We want to go much deeper than that. We want to go beyond the surface clues. We want to go beyond the past experiences. We want to go beyond the observable patterns or the observable experiences that might have contributed to these patterns. We want to go deep into the body-mind foundations to see the deeper constructs, the deeper structures of its navigational patterns that are behind all of the types of thoughts and all of the types of feelings and all of the types of responses and all of the types of behaviors. Okay? And then once we find that information, then the next step is effectively reconstructing it. And again, this was like a big hot topic in my Implicit Revelations case study a while back, before I got into some deeper stuff with the liberated consciousness diagram and the marathoning techniques. This was a big thing that was explored several years ago and has been used in some profound ways. And so this is something I use in my Implicit Health Life Coaching, and I'm excited to share it. So once you find the locational activation of that data, and this is actually insights that are behind some of the marathon techniques as well, and the treasure mapping, actually. It's just kind of a background insight though. Once you find the activation of that data, then you want to figure out, how do I actually rewrite it? How do I actually transform it? How do I actually resculpt its pattern in such a deep way that its instinctive projections are going to be different for the next 25 years of my life, next 50 years of my life, the next 100 years of my life. And it might not be, you rewrite the pattern once and it's permanently like that, but it might be you go through a process technique a few times and then you have this foundation and you just kind of, reaffirm that foundation as you move forward. But how do I actually rewrite that pattern in a way that it is actually rewritten? So where is the data? How do I get to the data? What is the data? What is this content? Where is this content? How do I activate and access this content of navigational patterns? And how do I rewrite it? How do I resculpt it? How do I put new information in these networks? How do I reconstruct the navigational patterns and potential projections of this information? How do I rewrite the way my body stores unconscious memories and uses that information to automatically simulate thoughts, feelings, movements, responses, sensations in my personal experience? And so the body mind has learned throughout experience how to navigate existence, especially in relation with the well-being of attachment needs, which have aided in the processing of this information and is now stored in these unconscious memories that carry navigational patterns that can be projected into personal experience and are also affected by and affecting regulatory structures and brain body systems. And so if there's a pattern of thinking, feeling, moving, or responding, any aspect of mental, emotional, behavioral, or action pattern health that is disrupted in some way, that you want to change, that is not serving you, that it's bothersome or painful or maybe totally disabling to experience, or just not serving and supporting who you want to be in this life and how you want to experience this life and how you want to live your life. Then we're not just looking at the surface clues. We're not just looking at past experiences that might have contributed to it. Those can provide starter clues, but we want to go deeper into the body mind and actually find where the pattern is in terms of how do we access the activation of its information. What is the content and how do we access that content? And then we want to know, how do we rewrite it? How do we resculpt it? How do we allow for new information to be inside of that navigational pattern in a way that lasts, in a way that this change can be made permanent? Maybe not immediately, but with, maybe a few journeys into the technique that's being used, and then maybe a practice that continues to solidify that new navigational pattern. How do we create change that lasts? And change that is so deep in the body mind that the automated projection of thoughts and feelings changes by itself because you went deeper than just the pattern of thought. You went into the deep foundational structures of all navigational patterns, all navigational potentials, the organization of all different unconscious memory structures, resculpted a specific region of content, but then also influenced the way that those navigational patterns are existing and operating beyond awareness to affect the way that is projecting these interpretations of reality through navigational structures and through the body mind into personal experiences of consciousness. And so experiences are stored in relation with the well-being of attachment needs. My ear itches.